first thing I'm going to talk about is the top that I made, which is this one, and the various steps that I went through to get to this stage. So the pattern was a named pattern, and it was the Inari tea dress, and I just did the crop t-shirt version of it. And initially when I started coming up with ideas for this piece, I had wanted a loose fitting t-shirt and I was going to do a gathered skirt on the bottom, but that didn't really work out when I first made it. So I ended up having to take in the top, and I added a zip. So it's the Inari T pattern was the base, but it's just adjusted it a little bit as I went along. So the first step was to cut out and stick together the entire PDF pattern, which I'm showing here, but took like an hour. Then I went ahead and cut out the tee from the lining fabric. So I used this kind of as my mock-up. I figured if I made it and it fit, I would add it as lining to the actual material, which is a little bit see-through. So I cut it out of an old sheet that I got from Vinnie's a little while ago when I started sewing, and I was at a friend's house actually, so I wasn't at my desk and I didn't have my pattern weights or anything, sorry, so I ended up using her cutlery, which actually worked pretty well, like completely fine. I actually made a mistake here. I cut out all the pieces. I really only needed the front bodice and the back bodice, and maybe the sleeves to test out the sizing of it, because I wasn't going to do the facing or the hem on the test piece. So I did more work than I needed to, but I guess I know that for next time. So I went ahead and put together the front and back bodice pieces of the Inari tee. I added the lining fabric, and this is interesting actually working with this pattern because I've only ever worked with commercial patterns that had a seam allowance of 5/8 of an inch, and this pattern had 1 centimeter, I believe, so that's 3/8 of an inch if I can remember correctly, which meant I really had to make sure that I was sewing the right one. So once I tried that on and I figured out that it fit fine, I liked how it looked, I went ahead and cut it out of the Christmas fabric that I made the shirt out of. So this was fabric that I got from Lincraft on sale. They had a Christmas sale. I think it was $3 Australian a meter, so it was pretty good. It was a little bit see-through, but for all intents and purposes it cut very well, and it's a poly cotton blend. When I was cutting the main fabric out, I did go ahead and cut the facings as well, which you can see me doing here. This is interesting as well because the facings didn't have any seam allowance, which I've never seen before. And actually, I saw it again in another skirt pattern I did, where the pink linen skirt that you'll see in January probably, the facings also didn't have any seam allowance, so that was really weird. I've never had that before. I don't know if that's a common thing. I mean, if it is, I guess comment below and I'll be more educated. What that meant though is that further down the line I had to add another piece to the facing pieces. Like I had to cut out, I think, the front facing again and add extra because I hadn't allowed for the fact that there was no seam allowance in the facing pieces. I also didn't interface the facing pieces just because I figured it was a Christmas outfit. It's not something I'm probably going to wear again other than at the party that I made it for, and so I didn't interface it. I didn't finish any of the seams, which is fine because I'm not planning on like washing it or wearing it for an extended amount of time. went ahead and sewed the front bodice and back pieces together, and then laid the lining over the top of that, right sides together, so that the seams were all on the inside, at least for that part, and then closed up the side seam. So the next step was then to build the sleeves, and the sleeves actually came out much easier than I thought they would come out. I've done sleeves in the past where I've installed them the wrong way around, or the cuff hasn't come out nicely, or it's kind of a mess. But the instructions for this were really easy to follow on the pattern instructions. So what you did was you got the sleeve piece, and in my case also the lining, sewed it right sides together, then got the cuff, sewed that right sides together so it was a little tube, and then attached that to the outside of the bottom of the sleeve, also right sides together. And you did this thing where you fed the sleeve through the cuff hole, and so they were kind of in each other. The sleeve was in the cuff, and you sew it right sides together and then flip it out, and the seam is hidden inside the sleeve, which I found really interesting. I've never done that before, and it worked really well. I've only ever seen with Wendy do this, as in shove the sleeve into the shirt and sew around it, and I found it a really neat trick. So the next step is to attach the sleeve. This is what the sleeve came out looking like. I think it's pretty cool. This is the sleeve end, that's the shoulder end. Pretty happy with it. The idea is to slide this sleeve, once you've turned your shirt inside out, into the armhole, so that the fabric of the t-shirt and the fabric of the sleeve are right sides facing. Then you pin all around the edge and ease it into the arm side, or the armhole, and then sew it shut. So I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's the first fitting of the shirt that I made, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. I haven't done the neck or the hem yet, but you can see it's got the little cuff detail, and the shoulders came out nicely. It's so good. I'm so excited. I also did a blind hem, so I turned it up slightly, maybe like half an inch, when then machine stitched it, and then, which you can see the straight line, and then I did a blind hem by hand in the car about 20 minutes before the Christmas party, so that was really interesting.